All right, hey guys, welcome back to the garage. Today we're going to be doing some more work on the Civic. So we just finished doing all of the new suspension control arms all the way around, and now the first thing that we need to do is an alignment. Otherwise, this car is going to crab walk all over the road. Our camber is out, as you can see in the back, the tire. The top of the tire, we've got positive camber here. We want to suck that in. We also want to make sure on the front that we've got proper toe in. That way the car isn't trying to point its way off. And a little bit of toe in is really good on your car because it helps the wheel self-center as you're driving. So if you ever are taking a little bit of a turn, you let go of the wheel and it wants to go back straight, that's because of toe in. That's what causes that. So some of the things that you'll need, it's super basic and easy. You'll want to know the dimensions of how far, like the degree camber that you want, as well as the amount of toe in. So typically you'll see like 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch, 1/16 inch of toe in. And I'll show you guys how to measure that, and also show you some of the math behind it on how you can get the angles out of it as well. But basically all we're going to use is just a nice little wrench. Something that you can do to help protect the paint on your control arms and everything is wrap this in tape. This is pretty beat up, so I'll put some fresh tape on it. And then we're going to use a couple jack stands and some string, and then we're going to take some basic measurements off the car to make sure everything's nice and straight. And then I'll start making adjustments and I'll show you how to do that. All right, so I went ahead and I got all my stuff together, got some nice hot pink thread. It's super easy to see. Stole it from my wife. Definitely feel free to hit up your mom, your grandma, your mother, sister, whoever.
Mistress.
Mistress or Mister. Just grab some thread, some yarn, something like that, something that you can string across 2 jack stands. So I've got these 2 set up here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a string between the 2. I'm going to pick a solid point across the car and measure it to make sure that they're parallel to the side of the vehicle. And once I do that, then I'll be able to do my measurements for each wheel. So I'm going to go ahead and start running this up. Here we go. Grab a little bit of tape so this will help hold it taut. I'll just put a little bit of tape on top of this side, and we'll do the same thing on the other side just to keep this from slipping around on us. We want to keep it nice and tight because we're going to be taking our measurements off of it. Okay, so now we've got that set up. I've got a set of digital calipers. You can use a tape measure, ruler, whatever you want. Anything that'll give you a number. So these ones, I'm just going to move it straight to inches. And what I'm going to pick is right here at the bottom of the door, and then I'm going to pick the back side of the door over there. So those will be my chassis points to measure off of. So here I need to get a little bit closer. All right, that's at like 6.1. That one right there. Okay. So you just shift these in and out until you get it even on both sides. And then we'll pick up when I start going onto one of these corners. Okay, so I went ahead and got the measurements based off the door, but your door isn't always perfectly parallel to your suspension. So I use that to kind of get me into the ballpark. We're moving these things around. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure off the center of the hub out to the string. We're at 4.4. And you can see that we're a little far out. And we'll just come back up to the front to double check. Yep, and we're right at the same spot again. So now we're all nice and perfectly squared up to the wheels. And now we're going to start taking measurements on each corner. Okay, now that we're all centered up, I'm going to go ahead and start working on the toe in the front. So I'm going to grab my notebook, I can do some of it by re-zeroing out, which I'll show you on this, but I'll also show you how to do it by calculation. So I'll go ahead and grab my wrench. All right. So just looking at it, we already know that it's towed in, but I have this set on inches. I want to go about 1/8 of an inch of tow in on each side. So I'll convert this over to fractions. Set it to the edge of the rim or wheel. Center that up on the string. And then we can zero. And then we'll go over to this side and do the same thing, but now we're going to walk it out. And there we're 11/16 of toe in, and we want 1/8 or 2/16. So we've got a little bit of movement to go up in this corner. So one thing to keep in mind, especially when you're doing the front, is when you're making adjustments to your the tie rods, is one of two things are going to happen, or both. Is when you're shortening or lengthening, what it's going to do is it's going to pull and push on both ends. So what that'll cause is either movement of your steering rack, which will rotate your steering wheel, and it will look like the wheel on the ground isn't moving until you look into the cabin and all of a sudden your steering wheel's at 30 degrees off center. Or what it'll do is it'll rotate the tire, but not the wheel on the inside. And so a lot of times you're going to get a little bit of both. So you're going to want to make an adjustment, recenter up the steering rack, and then take another measurement, make another adjustment, recenter it. Yeah, so that's where we'll go from there. And I'll start loosening stuff up and we'll get things adjusted down to that 1/8 inch. Okay team, so I showed you the easy way with some digital calipers that I was able to zero out, and it gave me exactly what that dimension is. So if you have just like a tape measure or a ruler or a analog system, then I'll show you how to do the math here. So we'll do the same thing, except this time I'm gonna convert this to just straight inches. Zero that bad boy out. So just pretend you're reading denominations off of a ruler or off of a tape measure or something like that. So here we go. There's 1.81, and that's in the rear. And then in the front, we are at 2.3, we'll call that 2.38. All right, so we'll do a little math here. 1.81 minus 2.38 equals minus 0.57. So we've got negative camber at 0.57. And what we need is 1/8, which is 0.125. So we'll need to adjust from this to a negative 1.25. So the way to do that is you need to adjust the front out some more, so then the difference between this measurement and this measurement is less, hence going from the 0.57 difference to the 0.125. And then that will give us our 1/8 of toe in on this corner. So now that we know how far we need to go, I'm going to go ahead and loosen up the tie rod on the inside and start adjusting it. Another thing that we'll do is we'll just verify that the steering wheel stays straight inside the cabin. We'll come back out, take another measurement. I'll meet you there.
All right, everybody, it's nerd time. So like I was telling you earlier, this is kind of how you calculate out the angles by using distances. So we're going to go back to our old friend of trig with the SOHCAHTOA rules. So what we were measuring in the garage was distance 1 and distance 2, but we need to have a right triangle with one end as a 0. So essentially we take the D1 and the D2 and subtract those, and then we get D3, which will pretty much just give us the distance of the one side. So this will be our toe in or toe out area. All right, now moving on, we're going to take that D3 measurement, and now we're going to start looking at what that angle is. So essentially with this is the opposite over hypotenuse, so your so part. So it's the sine of your angle is the opposite D3 over your hypotenuse, which is D4, the diameter of your wheel. And in our case, we're looking at that 1/8 of toe in that we're looking for on the numerator, and the denominator is we're just going to throw 15 for the 15-inch wheel that I have on there. That gives us our 0.0 whatever, and then just to narrow it down to the actual angle, we'll take the inverse sine or arc sine of that, which gives us 1/8 of toe in is 1/2 degree of toe in.
All right, so me and Daniel have kind of been tag teaming this. I've been under the car, turning the tie rod, taking measurements. So now I've got my demarcation set to 1/8 inch, and I zeroed off of the back end here. So I'll show you again here. All right, we'll zero that, drive this out to 1/8. Lock that bad boy, and then set her up. There it is, dead on, right there at an 1/8 inch of toe. So now what I'll do is I'll get back under there and I'll tighten the little nut that goes onto the end of the tie rod there, and then we'll do the same thing on the other side. Okay, so we went ahead and we got the toe dialed in on the fronts, and now we're going to work on a little bit of the camber. This one I'm a little bit less strict about. I'm going to just kind of eyeball it from here, but what you really want to do is get yourself a straight edge, or you can take that string from earlier and just hang it kind of like a plumb bob. And you'll do the same thing where you'll measure to the top and measure to the bottom, and that'll give you your amount of camber there, where we're measuring front to back for our toe in this direction. I'm not too worried about the fronts. We're gonna go ahead and camber it in a little bit, because this one you can see it's leaning out, so that's positive camber. Negative camber is going into the car. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use my tire wear as my indicator. I may dial in a little bit more. I gotta look up some more camber specs, and then I may measure it out. But for now, I'm just gonna kind of get it close. It's still project phase, so before we actually take it to the track day, we'll do a full final alignment on here, just to make sure everything's dialed in for the track. Okay, so we went ahead and got the alignment taken care of today. I showed you a quick, easy way to do it in your garage, using the string method and using some measurements. Also, take a look back on how to do some of the calculations yourself if you want to figure out the degrees of camber versus just a straight measurement. So we got the camber and toe in, and both sides are taken care of. The steering wheel's straight. Everything's looking way better. The car's not all wonky, and all four corners are now sitting right where they need to be. So we'll go ahead and leave you there at that, and we'll see you next time.